going to ask you 3 questions. First of all, how many people here believe that the government should be financially responsible with the money we give them? How many people believe that? All right. How many people believe that the government of the United States should be limited and that they shouldn't be in all your business? And how many people here believe that the Constitution is the law of the land and the line that the government never crosses? You believe that? That's right. You see, we started this little thing on September the 3rd, 2013 in Siskiyou County, when a few folks were tired of the fact they didn't have representation. They were tired of the fact that the government was overreaching every single aspect of their life. You guys, maybe you'll agree with this. How many people here understand that the government controls every single thing you do, from what you eat, to your light bulb, to what toys your kids play with, to what paint you use? How many people believe that? Yeah, because they do, huh? Is that the way the government's supposed to work? No. So, on September the 3rd, 2013, Siskiyou County signed a declaration to withdraw due to lack of representation. That was the first county. They went 4-1, and yeah, you can clap. That was the first county. Second county was Modoc. 20 days later, they went 4-0. Third county was Glenn County, and we went down. Y'all know where Orland is? Anybody know where Orland is? Okay, good. Y'all know where Willows is? Okay, Glenn County. We went there and did a town hall. The first one we did was around 10 o'clock in the morning, and we were in Orland. And we got darn near 300 people. It was amazing. They were coming out in droves. Importantly, we got 4 supervisors. By the way, is there anybody here who is in office or running for office or has served in any capacity, whether that be city council, board of supervisors, senate, anything like that? If anything like that, could you please stand? All right. Thank you, you guys. Thank you. Well, 4 of the board of supervisors of Glenn County were at that first meeting. 4 of them out of 5. The 5th one wasn't there because he was recovering from back surgery. 3 hours later, we went to Willows, and we got 250 more people at that one. All 4 of them followed us. They didn't even ask for a presentation. They asked for a declaration, and they signed a declaration 5-0 to withdraw from the state of California. Followed by Tehama County. By the way, is there anybody here from Tehama County? All right. Boy, you guys are sure quiet. Doesn't sound like Tehama to me. Well, there we go. There's Tehama. I like Tehama. They shoot first and ask questions later. Anybody here from Siskiyou County? Yeah, you can hear them. Anybody here from Shasta County? Oh, wow. Okay. Anybody here from Glenn County? Anybody here from Lassen County? Yeah. All right. Anybody here from Plumas County? Well, there. Am I forgetting anybody? Butte County. Hildy. Tehama County had a presentation, and their board of supervisors made it at a special time. Y'all meet at 9:30, right? 9 o'clock on Tuesdays, right, Supervisor? Okay. They did a special meeting so they could have a presentation. They had one, asked for more information, then had another one at 6 o'clock, and then made a decision to put it on the ballot for the people to vote on. So we'll just leave that one sitting for a little while, and we'll move down the road to Yuba County. While this was all percolating, we were waiting for the vote. We went to Yuba County, came back, went back down again about 4 weeks later, and Yuba County has a supervisor named Roger Abe who made an interesting remark. Supervisor Vasquez had brought the motion to sign the declaration and was looking for a second. And Roger Abe made this comment. He said, the only thing I've heard from my constituents is that it's too hard. They wish it would happen, but it's too hard. We all know California is an overreach, and I'm sure that you all can probably relate to this if you've ever been to a supervisor meeting. You may as well walk in and say, show me the money, because they're always looking for money, aren't they? Because they're not getting a lot of their money from California. And they're dealing with regulations they can't deal with, and they're dealing with state regulations and all this other stuff, CARB, you name it. So it's really kind of a nightmare. Roger Bay looked at the people out there and said, you know, the only thing I've heard is that people really want it, but they just don't know if we can get it done. And then he said, but you know, I'll bet in 1964, no one would ever thought civil rights would have happened either. And they voted 3-1 in favor of separation. Then we went to Sutter County. Went down there, we packed out the place, did a presentation, came back about 4 weeks later, and it's still not, was it June 4th, guys, that we had the vote? June 4th? Went down there, and they were a little bit hesitant the first time, but they had a lot of people speak, everybody in favor of. There was about 250 people in that building, flowing outside as all the other board of supervisors that we visited. And they decided to sign a declaration 5-0. Now, in the wings, we've got Tehama County. Now, you all know there was, a 20% turnout, 18% turnout in California, right, of voters? That's horrible. That's horrible. You know, God gave us this country, and God gave us our rights. The Constitution doesn't give us rights. That's the line in the sand. God gives you your rights. And if you go to church on Sunday and you do nothing about being a steward for your country and you don't vote, shame on you. Shame on you. Well, Tehama County had their vote, and with a low turnout, they voted 57% to 43% in favor of the state of Jefferson. That was number 6. Who will be 7? Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Turner.
Lassen County and everyone else from the surrounding counties, thank you very, very much for coming out. My friend Barbara Keeling and myself, we had a very fun time putting this together. So we're very grateful for everybody who came out, and we hope that you could spread the word about our message that we have for separating from California to form a state of Jefferson more. And I hope that you get a lot of information that you've needed. I had a great time running for District 3 Supervisor earlier this year. One of my opponents who came out on number 1, Jeff Hemphill's here. I'm very glad that he's out. Thank you, Jeff, for coming out. Appreciate it. And I got to learn a lot during this campaign and everything, and all the people I got to meet throughout the county. And a big part of really why I ran for supervisor was I wanted to do what I could for my county to put pressure on the state legislature and really to actually help form Jefferson because of our lack of representation that we have had since 1964. And most people don't know, I'll be very brief before I hand the microphone back to Terry, but the state of Jefferson has been topic since 1852. So it's a very, very old movement, and we just want to keep it going, and we actually want to finish the job this time. But there's a few things that we're going to be learning tonight that are very direct and relate to Lassen County specifically. Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution, Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, and what really affects Lassen County with our prisons is Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1 of the Constitution, about how our prisons are protected. We don't have to worry about losing our jobs or our correctional officers losing their pensions or anything. So those jobs aren't going to go away. And everything will be explained in detail. I don't want to take any thunder or overlap from everything. But again, I just want to thank everybody for coming out. And I really hope that information is very good, received very well. And I hope everybody gets motivated to help spread the message, because we really want to try to take this presentation to our Board of Supervisors. And we hope that they're going to be receptive of it. And we hope that they will vote in favor of signing a declaration as well. So back to you, Terry. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe. Okay, representation. Okay, another quick little quiz here. Okay, everybody understands the federal form of government, right? Okay. How many senators does each state have? You sure? Yes. No, it doesn't depend on the county. It's the state. I'm talking about each state in Congress. Senate, U.S. Senate. Did I say that? That's the first day of my new tongue. I'm sorry. Okay. So each state has 2 senators in Congress. Okay. Who's bigger, Maine or California? Okay. And California has how many senators? And Maine has how many senators? And the House is based upon population, correct? Well, prior to 1964, that's exactly what we had. We had 1 senator per county in the state, and we had assembly based upon population. So, that means y'all had a senator, Modoc had a senator, Siskiyou had a senator, etc., etc., etc. Because in Federalist Papers 51, James Madison understood that the counties and the townships and the towns and all the people, minority or majority, had to be represented, right? So that was the way to balance it. In 1964, Chief Justice Warren, because of a number of cases, including Reynolds versus Sims, decided, no, it's one man, one vote. And Mark will talk about that in a while, so I'm not going to go into that. But he changed the law. So that means that now 11 counties are represented by 1 senator, and Los Angeles County alone has 11. Yep. 2 assemblymen, and Los Angeles County alone has 24. Who's going to win that battle? Huh? Just like Sacramento. Who's going to win that battle? San Francisco. Who's going to win that battle? So 1 man, 1 vote. Is that constitutional, do you think? No, it's not, is it? Ladies and gentlemen, Barbara Keeling.
So I'm Barbara Keeling, and last year in September I had a booth at Civil War Days, and Terry Rapoza said, "Hey Barbara, can you help us get some signatures to support the state of Jefferson?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" I never knew I was going to get so involved in the state of Jefferson, but things just continued on from there. I recently moved here from Shasta County. Things are not much better in Shasta County. We've got some serious problems. People say, "Well, why do you do this?" Well, because I'm a mom. And our children deserve better. Right now, over 90% of our taxes go to Southern California or to the capital, and they disperse them to wherever, which is Southern California. Between 2008 and 2010, 3,000 school teachers were laid off in California. In 2008, LA County built a school. Now, mind you, LA County has a 50% dropout rate. 50% of those kids drop out. But in 2008, they built a school. It's called the Roybal Learning Center. It cost $377 million to build that school. Very fancy school. In 2009, the Visual Performing Arts High School was built. That one cost $232 million. In 2010, the Robert Kennedy Community School cost a whopping $578 million to build. They say that we need to build these schools. The population in LA is growing. We all know how the population in LA is growing. But my son goes to Janesville School. They don't have lockers for the junior high kids. We only have 1 high school in this area. Children have to take the bus an hour and a half before school starts to get to school. That's not okay. Shingletown, small community of 1,000 people, they had a leaky roof in their cafeteria. It took them 2 years to get that patched because The state said they didn't have any money to give them. But yet our tax dollars go to Southern California to build schools that our children are not going to go to, and we get nothing. We get very little. We get patch jobs. We can't get lockers. We can't get anything. So this is why I'm doing this. It's important to me that my son goes to a good school. I do not like Common Core. That's one of the things that I would want to get rid of right away. But that's why I do it. Back to you, Terry.
Thank you, Barbara. Oh, it's quick. Pithy. You know, we talk about the money, and we talk about where your money goes. Anybody in here have the fire tax? Oh, you do? Okay. Can I see hands again? Huh? It's a fee? Okay. What's your name, sir?
Larry Larson.
Okay, Larry. Let's do an audience participation here, so you guys can all pretend like you're Larry. Okay? We're all Larry now. By the way, thank you for your service, sir. You bet. Okay. First of all, Larry finds out about this, and he knows that there are bureaucrats down in Southern California who are putting this law together. It's interesting because they can get this law going, and it doesn't even affect their constituents, does it? Because they have municipal fire departments. So he can put money in the general fund, which I'll talk about in a second. They can put that money in there, and Larry, you have no way of stopping that, do you? But you're going to call him up. So Larry goes, okay, I'm going to call him up. Well, he calls up. And they say, well, Larry, what is your area code? And he said, well, it's 530. Well, I'm sorry, but our assemblyman isn't your assemblyman. You'll have to call Mr. Daly. So then he says, okay, well, I've had it. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to email him. And Larry's waiting by his computer for an answer, and they don't answer him because you're not their constituent. So you need to get a hold of Mr. Daly. Now, finally, you had it. You're writing a handwritten letter with all kinds of language that the pastor will have to forgive you for. Okay, and he did. So you write this letter. They get the letter down there, but they just look at the outside and they see the zip code on the return address, and they send it to who? Mr. Daly. Isn't that called taxation without representation? You all want to know where the first $74 million went to that? You want to know where the money went? Well, actually, that's partially true. Where it went, and this is according to the Associated Press, where it went it was $74 million. So we're going to do some math here, right? Okay? $74 million, $50 million of that went to the general fund every year. Goes to the general fund every year. Not 1 year, every year. That's $50 million. That's well over half. $12 million of it goes to people who come and see Larry and say, hey, Larry, that tree's too close to your house. That bush is too close over here. You need to go to the county and pay for a permit and take it out. Okay? And that's $12 million of it. Then $10 million is an administration fee, because California historically takes anywhere from 14 to 40% of the money that goes down and comes back. 14 to 40%. That's exactly 14%. So now we've got about $1.4 million left. That's what we got left. And that's used for fire prevention programs. Not 1 cent of your money went to a fireman. Not 1 cent of your money went to a fire truck. Not 1 cent of your money went anywhere but basically to where they wanted to have it. Isn't that called taxation without representation? Well, the next part of the program is interesting. It's going to be something we can just call Show Me the Money. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Smith.
Hello. Happy to see everybody here. Hope you guys are ready to make a change in Lassen County and try something that might actually work, because what we're doing now isn't getting it done, and I think most people here realize that. So, as Terry touched on, our problem is representation. Now, how many people think that America is a democracy? Pretty smart crowd. You understand that we're supposed to be a constitutional republic. Pledge of Allegiance you just did a couple minutes ago, and to the republic for which it stands. So what happens without that representation? Well, we get hit with things that we can't do anything about. How many people know that there's 20 cents coming, another 20-cent tax per gallon on your fuel coming January from Cap and Trade? And that's the start. What about the mileage tax? Everybody know about that one? That they are going to start charging you per mile that you drive a tax. You're going to have to go to DMV every year, show them your odometer, come back at the end of the year, they'll take an odometer reading and charge you for how many miles you drove. Who do you think that tax is pointed at? People that live in a city and have to drive a half a block to the grocery store or school or to work and have access to public transportation? Or is that pointed at people like us that actually have to drive somewhere to get where they're going? What about all the different gun laws and things that California is passing with no understanding of what's going on? Or the real biggie that's coming, and I think it's going to start a fight, groundwater regulation. How many people know about groundwater regulation? Good. So you know it's coming. You know that the state of California is planning to come on your land, put a meter on your well, and charge you for your water. This is what lack of representation has bought us, is things like this. And this is what we have to change. It has bought us a crushing debt. State of California is over $425 billion in debt, and that's going up $5,000 a minute. We have another $840 billion in unfunded liability. Unfunded liability, for those of you that don't know, means the money's due, the bill's just not in the mailbox yet. We are over $1.2 trillion in debt in California, and it's accelerating, and it's getting worse. Now, what does that mean? That means that each of my 3 children, 2 of who are not out of diapers yet, already owe the state of California $30,000 in taxes before they're even out of the box to get going on their life. We will be the first generation, my generation, will be the first generation in American history that will inherit a lower standard of living than the generation before us. That has never happened before. And the outlook for my children and my grandchildren is a lot worse. That's why I'm in this fight. It's because that is not the inheritance that I'm going to hand them. I am not going to hand them the inheritance that is being handed to me. I am going to do everything I can to change it. Now, a lot of people will say, well, what do we do without California's money? Well, can one person in this crowd tell me what money from California? What money? Okay, we have been from county to county to county. We have sat in on Board of Supervisors meetings, and we keep hearing the same thing. The money's not coming from California. In my own county of Shasta, we were sitting waiting to do a presentation on the state of Jefferson, and we heard, well, where's the money? They were going over their budget, and they were going line item by line item, and one of the Board of Supervisors said, where's our $3 million for mental health programs that we were guaranteed? We'd have already outlaid that money as the county. Where's our reimbursement? And it got real quiet in the room, and the lady spoke up, and she said, well, we talked to California about that. They said maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years, probably never. We were sitting in Butte County and heard something a lot like the same. They're wanting to know where their reimbursement's coming from. And we have started tracking that money now, and we believe that California has defaulted on at least $100 million of revenue that they owe the counties. They're trying to pass state legislation right now that the counties are still going to have to enable programs that the state demands, but the state doesn't want to pay for them. But you're still going to have to run them. That money's coming out of you. So I ask you again, what money from California? Most of the money that's dispersed here for public assistance and things like that comes from the federal government. Now, what does that mean? Because a lot of people say, if we go into Jefferson, what are we going to do without the welfare dollars? That's basically what they ask. We're the welfare counties. Well, most of that money comes from federal programs. So what do we do in the state of Jefferson? Well, that federal money will still flow. And by the way, the state of Jefferson's not going to take 14 to 40% off the top in an administration fee to get it to the people that it needs to go to. Why do we have to pay 14 to 40% to cut a check? It's ridiculous. And this is how California does its math. Because if you look at California's budget and the way that they do math, they give us a lot more money than we take in, than we put out. But this is why. Any money transferred in from the federal government that California disperses, Well, that's not a transfer in from the federal government. That's a transfer in from the state of California. The money that they give back to you in tax revenue, that's not your money. That's a transfer back in from the state of California. They take the money from you, they disperse it around, they hand it back to you, tell you you get about 16% that you can spend discretionary yourself, and then tell you that they gave you that money. It's Enron math. In short, to make it real simple, is say you are the county of Lassen, and you generate $100 in tax revenues, property taxes, fuel taxes, things like that. I'm the state of California. I come along, I take your $100, I hand you $60 back, and then tell you can't afford to live on your own because I just had to give you $60. That's how they do their math. That's how California says you can't afford to live on your own. So how do we fix these things? Well, we think we have an answer. We restore our representation, and we bring our representation back down to a model that actually represents the people, and the way to do that is by asking for statehood. Now I ask you, does anybody else out here have any other ideas? Anybody? Okay. Because here's my thing, is I'm not going to sit back and ride the California horse off the cliff. If you want to sit back and ride that horse off the cliff, you go right ahead. I'm not coming with you, and neither are my kids. So what we want to do is we want to restore a Republican form of government. That is two houses representing the people. One that is equal based on geography and one that is based on population. That is what our forefathers intended. It's what's mandated by the Constitution, and that's what we're going to have again. So what we want to do is legal, as Mark will get into the details. It's constitutional. And one of the things that we do want to touch on, because it does concern a lot of people, what about my retirement? What about my money, the things that I've done? We can't change that constitutionally. We can't do anything about it. You're not going to lose your jobs, as was said. So, now the other thing that people hit on is financially sound. Okay, we separate from California. Are we financially sound? Well, the short answer to that is yes. How do we know that? We have poured through so many different documents. We've gone through California's numbers. We've gone through our own numbers. We've gone through historical data. We've gone through the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics, the U.S. Census, Department of Agriculture, Department of Interior, California Statistical Abstract, the CAFA report. I could go on and on and on. And here's the picture that we have. Number one, since 1994, we've lost 28% of our economy. We are at 28% of our economy that we were 20 years ago. We have lost 72% of our economy. Number two thing that we found out, day one, right out of the box, we can afford to support ourselves and run an aggregate. Because California does take more than they give back from us. If California is giving us so much money, why are they so hell-bent all the time trying to figure out more ways to take it away from us? So knowing that we are at 28% of the economy, knowing that we can start right out of the box, yes, Jefferson can support itself. Because in medical terms, our economy, through overregulation of California and California's failure to stand up to the federal government in our defense, we have been turned into quadriplegics economically. We have no arms, we have no legs. But day one, we can start to restore that, we can start to fix that. And everybody needs to understand you don't just vote, or this doesn't just happen and you wake up in Jefferson the next morning. This will be a process, so it's not just bang, there it is. But once we are going, we know that we can support ourselves, and that's at 28% of what we used to be. We know we can at least be 72% better than we are now. We can get up on our own legs, we can learn to walk again, we can run, we can have a future, we can have a future for my children. Anybody that grew up here remembers what it was like when there was revenues, when there was use of our resources, and we can do that responsibly. We can restore our mines, we can restore our timber industry. It can be done. Now, the other people that say it's just too hard. Okay, like I said, you want to ride the California horse off the cliff? You go home and be the comfortable coward. You spend the rest of your life looking in the mirror, knowing that you had a chance to grab hold of liberty and hold fast, and you wouldn't take it. You look at your children as they fail and their future evaporates, and know you had that chance, but you thought it was too hard. So go ahead, tell me it's too hard, but know what you are when you say it. And as for it can't be done, well, we heard that a year ago, and look at where we are. Hundreds of thousands of supporters on Facebook, the youth energized, we have 6 counties on board already, and we have served the state of California notice on the first 2 counties to withdraw. Because let me get one thing straight for you all. We are not asking permission from the state of California to leave. We are doing the courtesy of informing them that we are leaving. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. You know, Robert touched on one thing very quickly, and that was, he said, if you got a better idea, we're in, right? Something better, we're all in, right? Well, I asked that to Brian Daly, I asked that to Jim Nielsen, I asked that to Doug LaMalfa, I've asked that to Tim Donnelly, I've asked that to a myriad of people, and they say, no, we don't have a better idea. Because there isn't one. Liberty and freedom. That's what we're doing here. If not for us, for our kids and grandkids. I asked Jim Nielsen one simple question when I was in Sacramento on Thursday, and that was, can you name one law? And I'll ask you guys the same question, because I've asked everyone in office that I know. Name one law out of the 8 they pass a day that doesn't make the law-abiding citizen of the state of California a criminal. Name one. That's the answer I get, too, from them. They can't. And Jim's answer was, I'm only one. Right, you're only 1 against 11. Or you're 5 against 50. But you know, imagine a state with no sales tax. Imagine a state where you can raise your kids. Imagine a state where you can harvest your timber. Imagine a state where you can do your copper mining. Imagine a state that tells you that you don't need metal bullets to shoot those squirrels underneath your house. Imagine a state that doesn't try to take away your constitutional rights. Imagine a state that gives education back to the counties. Imagine a state that gives counties the powers. Imagine a state where people would want to come and have commerce. Imagine that. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Baird.
Thanks very much for having me here. I want to make sure that I do this right. I don't usually kind of use the notes as much, but I'm going to sort of try to refer to my notes a little bit more so I make sure that I don't miss anything, because it's very important to me to help you understand how we can build a case for state split that's legal, ethical, moral, and has been done before. Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution of the United States, and I'm paraphrasing, said no state shall be formed from the territory within an existing state unless the state legislature agrees and Congress agrees. That's how we do it. It's one sentence. It's very, very simple. Not easy, but legally it's a very simple sentence. We don't need the governor's permission and we don't need the president's permission. They're not mentioned in Article 4. We don't really need the declarations. If we could wiggle our nose and get legislation passed, we don't even need declarations. We don't need a vote of any, we don't need anybody's vote to do this. We just need legislation that passes in both houses. The reason we're here is not to tell you how to live. The reason we're here is to ask you some questions, and one of those is, are you okay with the way Californians govern now, or do you want to try something different? The train called California has been on the same track for 50 years, and it's a failure. Debt is up, the economy is down, people are out of work, welfare is up. We just joined 11 states where more people are on welfare or work for the government than work in private industry. That's like a donkey cart that has 11 donkeys in it and one donkey pulling it. And that donkey is kind of turning around to the rest of the cart saying, boy, for $50 a month, I'd jump in that cart because I'm getting tired of pulling this alone. And that's what the state of California has become. But I need to prove to you, I need to show you why and how we have the jurisdiction to do this and why it is a legal, ethical, moral process. So I want to lay that out a little bit for you first, and then we'll go into exactly how the state is formed and what we aim to do. Really, the first question is the Constitution the truth or a lie? That's really what we're asking ourselves, because the Constitution has principles in it which we can derive the power and the jurisdiction to do exactly what it is we're talking about doing. Is the California Constitution a lie, or is it the truth? And that's one of the basic questions. Is liberty a lie or the truth? Why do we care about liberty? What does liberty mean? What does liberty and property mean to us? And why do we have to fight so hard to protect it? Why should we care? Why should we even care about any of these questions in our daily lives? The grocery store's open, you can still rent a movie, the TV works, the car works, gas is getting more and more expensive, but we still get a little bit of it, And so our lives are kind of just shuttling along, and the government tells us what to do, and we kind of shake our heads and we say, well, what are we going to do about that? And, we're just a few people and they're the government. And so that's the case I would like to build for you so that you see why we can do this, why we should do it, in fact, why the future of our children demand that we do it. We're here to talk about Jefferson, liberty, and Constitution. So put aside any preconceived notions you have about how life works here just for a minute and theorize with me. And let's kind of go back just a little bit, because unfortunately all we can do, and my wife says, well, oh gosh, you always talk about history. And why that is, because history is our guide for the future. We don't know anything about tomorrow, but we do know how things have gone so far. And the way the courts work, the way legislature works, the way the Constitution works is all based upon what has happened before and what has been deemed okay by people to do in the future and to do again, and what has been deemed not to be okay. So that's the case we want to build. Liberty was a journey of about 1,000 years. Marcus Cicero, one of the last Roman senators, 1,500, 2,000 years ago, he said that not all laws are on paper. Some laws are written in the hearts of men. They're not laws that you derive by learning. They're laws that you derive from nature. And now in those days, the term nature meant God. The founding fathers used that term quite a bit. They said natural law, nature's God, nature's laws. So what they meant by nature in those days, they meant God. Natural law is God's law placed in your heart the moment you're created. It's not something you ask for. Your inalienable rights are not something that anyone gives to you. Those are things that you're born with. Even the California Constitution, Article 1, Section 1 says, we are born free and independent by nature with inalienable rights. With inalienable rights. So even the California Constitution, in the very first clause, Article 1, Section 1, says you have the inalienable right to life, liberty, and property. And you have the right to pursue, possess, and protect your property. And those are inalienable rights. Among those inalienable rights are the right to pursue, possess, and protect your property. You have the inalienable right to defend your life. What good is your life if you don't have the power to defend it? What good is your right to free speech if the government can stop you and say, no, not today. We have a free speech zone a mile down the road. Go down there. Property rights are all of the rights in the Bill of Rights. All of those rights are property rights. Your life is your property. Your intellect, your ability to speak, your ability to worship God. That's yours. That belongs to you. It's in your heart. You were born with it. That is your property. What good is that right if it's turned into a permission anytime the government wants to do so? What good is the property beneath your land, your water, and according to California water law, water is property. It's real property, the same as a tree or a can of soup in your pantry. Well, what good is your right to that water if the government has to give you permission to use that water and then taxes you for the use of the water? Do you truly own something you can't afford to pay the tax on? Do you truly own your life if you're not allowed to pack a gun unloaded in public, and you're not allowed to have the gun in your house, and you can't carry the gun, and you can't use the gun, and you can't have bullets for the gun? What good is your life if someone can walk up to you and take it anytime they want? So liberty and property are intertwined. And in fact, Benjamin Franklin said, Samuel Adams said that unless property is secure, liberty cannot exist. Unless property is secure, liberty cannot exist. So liberty is very much intertwined with property. Now, what is liberty? Really, what is liberty? Liberty is freedom, isn't it? No. We don't have freedom here. We don't have that. Freedom is the power to kill, the power to drive down the road at 500 miles an hour, basically the power to lie, the power to do whatever you want. That's freedom. And we gave up certain freedoms willingly, knowingly. We wanted to do that in order to secure the liberties that we hold most dear. And those liberties are nothing but freedom with responsibility, with morality. That's what liberty is. It's freedom with morality and with responsibility. The responsibility to our neighbors. What are those things? Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal. Those are laws codified, right? Where do those laws come from? They come from the Bible. Our Judeo-Christian tradition built this country. That is the fact. I can prove it 1,000 times in one day. We know the founding fathers. We have every speech they ever wrote. We have their letters. We have their books. We know where their houses were. We've dug through their houses. We've looked at all of their artifacts. We know what they thought. We know what they said. We know how they acted. You can deny that all you want, but it's still the truth. So if the roots of the tree of liberty are Judeo-Christian principles, what kind of fruit are you going to get if you turn your back on that root? And you can say that it's the circle of life, the energy of things, it's okay, you're okay, it's all okay. You can say that all you want. But that's not how this country was formed. And that's not what makes it run well. What makes it run well is when we don't ignore the root and then expect to get the fruit that we want. We have to water that root. We have to take care of the tree of liberty, or the fruit is going to be no good. And you didn't pay for the tree, by the way. The tree was free. The tree was free to you. Your fathers paid for it with their blood, their treasure, and their sacred honor. Now, what's the price of that liberty? What's the cost to you? You didn't pay for it, but there is an ongoing cost, a maintenance fee, I guess. In fact, there's kind of a tax on liberty. And what is that tax? Eternal vigilance. So now, why are we here if all that stuff is true? If everything I said is true, why are we standing here today moaning and groaning about the government of California and how we want to change that into a different government? Because we allowed it. The reason we're here is our own fault. If you want to know, go look in the mirror and you can see who's at fault for this. I do it every day. I say, how did I allow this to happen on my watch? Because that's what I did. That's why I'm here. I'm here because I owe my children. I don't want a job. I don't want money. I don't want position. I don't want to be governor. I don't want any of that stuff. I want to secure liberty for my posterity, as my fathers did for me. That's why I'm standing here today. I don't want anything but that, and I will spend the rest of my life to fulfill that goal, and that goal is the state of Jefferson, and I'll tell you why it is. We can't go to the federal government and say, y'all don't behave right. You know, they'd laugh just like we're laughing at ourselves right now. We can't even go to Sacramento and say, y'all aren't behaving right, because they laugh at us. And they laugh at us because we are irrelevant. Your vote is irrelevant. You are irrelevant. You're irrelevant because you have no representation in Sacramento, as we did from 1925 to 1964 when we had the federal model of government. We had a senator. Lassen County could go to their senator and say, hey, we need to fix this, and he'd go try. And whether he succeeds, you're irrelevant because you have no representation in Sacramento, as we did from 1925 to 1964 when we had the federal model of government. We had a senator. Lassen County could go to their senator and say, hey, we need to fix this, and he'd go try. And whether he succeeded or not, you had representation for yourselves to meet your needs. And you don't have that now. Because Chief Justice Earl Warren made up a principle called one man, one vote. He made it up. One man, one vote is not found in English common law. It's not found in colonial law. It's not found in the Constitution of the United States anywhere. It's not found anywhere. In the Constitution of the United States, we have representative government, and we have representative government by the federal model. We have a senator, 2 senators for each state, no matter how small, no matter how big. We have 2 senators for each state, no matter how populous, no matter how sparsely populated. And then we have a House of the People that's elected by one man, one vote, the Connecticut Compromise or the Great Compromise. And as many as 30-plus state legislatures were run exactly the same way from the inception of this country until 1964, California included. So Chief Justice Earl Warren in 1964, he came up with something. He used the living document argument of the Constitution. The Constitution is a living document. The founders were old, we're new, we know more than they do. William Howard Taft, who was President of the United States and also a Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, addressed that very thing. He said the Constitution is cast in concrete, and do you know why? Because it's written in words. And you can look every one of them up in the dictionary. One of the Shasta County supervisors said that when they voted, in fact, they didn't vote no on Jefferson, by the way. They voted not to listen to the discussion. And they voted that it would have to be brought up by a majority of the board members if anyone wanted them to try to get to listen later. And the reason that one of them said that was because the Constitution is vague and unenforceable. Well, I'd like to address that just for a second. What part of the Constitution is vague? The part where it says the president serves for 4 years before he's elected for another term? The part where it says we have 2 houses, Senate, House of Representatives, Senate serves for so many years, House serves for so many years? The part where it says we have courts? Are those the parts that are vague and unenforceable? No. He was referring to the Bill of Rights. To him, that's the part that's vague and unenforceable. The part where your inalienable rights placed in your heart by God Almighty can't be enforced because you lack the representation to do that. But he is making a false assumption. We don't have constitutional rights. We never did. We have inalienable rights that are codified and guaranteed in the Constitution that the government is never to invade that area of our lives, never ever. And we also have that in the California Constitution. So once again, if that's true, why are we here? Because we allowed it. And that's what the state of Jefferson represents. It represents a chance to change that dynamic and place this government back where it belongs, which is in service of the people. So now Thank you. What exactly is our jurisdiction? First of all, we had men like Martin Luther who started a revolution that changed the world. He defied the Catholic Church, the most powerful military force on earth, and he won because the people helped him do it, right? Because the people stood up for themselves and their belief in God. We have people like Thomas Jefferson who said, in all manner of construct, don't try to wring what meaning out of the Constitution that you can. Go back to the spirit of the debate in which it was enacted. In other words, you can take the Constitution and you can read it like a Chinese dictionary if you want to, but that's not what the words say. And you're inventing meaning where meaning does not belong. If you take the construct of the Constitution, as in Marbury versus Madison in 1803, where the Constitution is written in plain English, it will be followed to the letter. That's not vague to me. Congress shall make no law. What's vague about that? Your right shall not be infringed. Nothing vague there to me. But it is vague to people who want you to serve the government instead of the government serve the people. So when we get back to the Constitution itself, we have 2 basic documents. One is the Declaration of Independence. And that was a journey. That was the journey of liberty to where we came into being. It started with the Magna Carta, the English Charter of Rights. It started 1,100 years before that. But we came to a place where we learned some things. And what we learned about ourselves is that when we separate the bands of politics from one people to another, we need to state our causes. That's what we're here to do today. We're here to tell you why we need to separate from Lower California. And also, we found out some things in our journey. One, that we were endowed by our Creator. Endowed. We inherited. It was placed in our hearts with certain inalienable rights. Among those, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to secure this liberty, governments are instituted among men. What is the purpose of government? What's the one purpose of government? To secure the rights of the people. It's not to give you money. It's not to pass out food. It's not to make sure everybody has a bicycle. I'm sorry, but it isn't even about Social Security. Social Security is an insurance policy. The government started it. They made you pay in it all your life. All that is a dividend on an insurance policy. Now, the government can be liars, and they can collapse the insurance scheme before you get it. That has nothing to do with liberty. That has nothing to do with your inalienable rights. Yes, you'd be mad, and yes, there are things we would do about that. But that has nothing to do with independence or constitution. This is about inalienable rights to life, liberty, and property, because the founders, by the way, knew that unless property was secure, liberty couldn't exist. That's why those two things are indispensably linked. So now we also learned in the Constitution, in the very first sentence, in a Shasta County supervisor, a different one, I answered questions for him for about 5 hours. We probably had 50 cups of coffee in Denny's there in Mount Shasta. And finally, he was getting a little frustrated with me. And he was just kind of like, well, what are you doing here? Why do you have the right to come to my county and tell me that I need to affirm this declaration? And I said, that's the easiest question you asked me all day. We the people. And here's where it gets better. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union. Think about that for a second. In order to form a more perfect union. Hey, what does that mean? It means we had a union before. We had the Articles of Confederation before, and they didn't work. They did not serve the people. So what did the people do? Because remember, folks, people came before government. People showed up to this country before government. We created government. Government didn't create us. Government wasn't instituted so that the new people that came to the new world would have lots of laws and rules. The people came first based on their need for religious expression and religious freedom, and just plain freedom from tyranny, by the way. And they came to these shores and they knew that they couldn't be free because freedom doesn't work, it's anarchy. They needed a nation of laws. And so they traded some of those freedoms to secure the liberty they held most dear, the liberty to worship, the right to free speech, the rights to property. We the people. In order to form a more perfect union. So once we won the war with the British, we formed the Articles of Confederation, and they didn't work. It was very clear to everybody. So the people in each one of the states of the United States, and by the way, we had 10 presidents before George Washington. The people abolished the Articles of Confederation, and they formed a more perfect union, the Constitution of the United States. California's Constitution, Article 2, Section 1 says, all just power is derived from the people, and when a form of government fails to serve the people, they have the right to alter that form of government into one more suitable to their needs. And I'm paraphrasing because I'm old and have no memory, but that's essentially what it says. The people have the power to alter their form of government. The people in the Constitution abolished a form of government outright, and they formed a government that more suited their needs. And why did they form that government? In order to secure liberty for their posterity. We do endow this Constitution to secure liberty for their posterity. That's why they formed the Constitution. So here we are today. Now, in the Constitution, there are several articles that give us the jurisdiction to form the state of Jefferson. The most important one was Article 4, Section 3, which I already told you about. The second most important one is Article 4, Section 4. The United States government guarantees that each state will have a Republican form of government. Republican in this context means representative. It doesn't mean Republican Party. Because quite frankly, I don't care what party you're in. I really don't. I don't even want to know. I'm not even in a party. It doesn't matter what party I'm in. My sister announced to me one day, she says, you know I'm a socialist. And I said, gee, no, Polly, after 62 years I would have never figured that out. But I said, even as a socialist, you should want more representation. I don't care who you are, you should want representation that affects you or can be affected by you. And the reason we're here is to establish a state with adequate representation for each county so that we can use that representation to restore the economy. Because you may have money. Your life may be great. But you're not going to keep it without liberty. You may have property. You may have 10,000 acres and 500 pairs of cows on there. You may have 10 wells producing 1,000 gallons a minute. But you are not going to keep them without liberty, and I think everybody in this room knows that. And if you don't, it'll become very, very clear as the next legislative year or two progresses. So what we want to do is we want to form a state with a constitution that gives the counties the lion's share of the power. We want counties to decide what should happen within their territory. We want the state to do what states should do, which is act as a liaison to the federal government, talk to other counties, arbitrate between other counties, lend advice when advice is asked for, and otherwise keep their nose out of the business of Lassen County, because that is yours to govern. We want our state representation to be part-time. California cranks out 800 laws a year. 800 laws a year. I can't even imagine that. About 400 of them come out in the last week of the legislature. They call it the sausage grinder. They're literally up till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, amending, producing. In fact, the illustrious Senator Sierra, I think he was, from Los Angeles, one of the cities in Los Angeles, gutted a health and safety bill. In other words, they had a public health bill for behavioral health or something else. He took all of the language out of that bill on the midnight hour, Friday night, I believe, and he reinserted language to give Siskiyou County an Indian casino that the county supervisors don't want, and that the county doesn't want, and that will increase crime in our county and so on. And he passed that legislation jumping on the stump and saying, well, there's really no opposition to this. Well, how on earth would he know? Because he never asked the people that live there. And he has the power to do that. So we want a state where each county has a legislator. Now, once again, let's go back to Earl Warren and Reynolds versus Sims. We had the federal model of government in California. And it started in 1925. But Earl Warren said that the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, Section 1, says everybody has equal protection under the law. And that's true. But where the fraud comes out is he decided that Article 1 has to do with voting, and it doesn't. It doesn't mention voting at all in Article 1, or 14th Amendment, Article 1, Section 1. It mentions voting in Section 2. You can't be denied the vote for race, creed, or color. A couple of other amendments mention voting. You can vote if you're over 18. Women can vote. There are different voting amendments, but it's not the 14th Amendment. That has nothing to do with voting by state. And what he did was, in a case earlier, in about 1962, and I'm not going to bore you with all the cases because there are about 10 of them, the Supreme Court gave itself the power to regulate the election processes in the states. Now, one of the dissenting justices in the Baker case said, we have no business in the thorny thicket of state politics. But Warren said, well, sure we do. Because if we do this, no state will ever deny someone the vote based on race, creed, or color because they'll be afraid to. They'd be afraid they'd end up in court. 30 court challenges later, they came up with another case, which was, I can't remember the name of it now. It's Gray versus Sanders. And in the Gray versus Sanders case, they said, well, now we need to fix all of the places where we were weak in the Baker case, and that way no state will discriminate because they'll all be afraid to. They'll end up in court. Well, about 25 court challenges later, Reynolds versus Sims comes up, and then Warren said, I'm just going to drive a nail in this box. And he said, all state elections will be run by apportionment schemes that are approved by the court. That was it. That was the end of the federal model of government. And so he did that based on the 14th Amendment. Well, oddly enough, there were 30 or 40 state legislatures that had the federal model of government, which means one senator for each county, both before the 14th Amendment and after it. In fact, California didn't ratify the 14th Amendment until 1959, and we had the federal model of government all the way up until the Reynolds decision. So I'm asking myself, was Earl Warren the first Chief Justice in 150 years that just happened to get it right? Did none of the other Chief Justices really see what the Constitution actually meant until Warren showed up? And by the way, Earl Warren was what General Eisenhower called the worst damn fool mistake I ever made. So the president that appointed him was sorry afterwards, but he wasn't sorry enough because we're suffering for that. So now, after the Reynolds versus Sims case, we have, oh, and by the way, Earl Warren said something in his retirement. He said, he was asked, what's your crowning achievement as Supreme Court Justice? And he didn't say desegregation. He didn't say civil rights. He said, I forced 30 state legislatures to change the way they elect state officers. So what Earl Warren did was he amended the Constitution without the benefit of the legislature and without the benefit of the people. And there are a lot of constitutional lawyers that think it was just bad law. But that's why we're here. Now remember, this is pretty complex, but remember, we're not here to overturn Reynolds versus Sims per se. We're here because of it. Because the court went on twice after Reynolds' case to ignore itself, and that's where we're coming to our cause. Once was Brown versus Thompson in Wyoming, where the court, oddly enough, granted a very small Wyoming county state representation that had less than 3,000 people. And he said all counties deserve representation, no matter how small they are. And I was kind of reading that, and I thought, well, gosh, that's not what he just said in 64. But what he said was, and this doesn't change Reynolds versus Sims because it isn't done prejudicially and it serves a greater state political good. So here the light goes on. They went on to ignore themselves again in Sawyer versus Tulare Water, where he said in Reynolds Warren initially said in Reynolds, votes can't represent rocks and trees. Votes have to represent people. But in Sawyer versus Tulare Water, or Saylor, I'm sorry, versus Tulare Water, he said votes can represent rocks and trees, provided it's not done prejudicially and it serves a greater state political good. So California has gone with the Reynolds model. One man, one vote. Why? Because all political power rests in the urban areas. That's where they claim all the money is. In fact, the LA Times said that the Jeffersonians are crazy because all the important work is being done in the cities and on the coast. Willie Brown, the mayor of San Francisco, who, by the way, supported Stan Statham's state split in 1992, Willie Brown said, those people up there just need to learn that all the power is in the urban areas, which is where it belongs, and those people need to learn how to obey. That's what he said. He said it on MSNBC. I heard it about 40 times. I was so mad I played it over and over again. So now Warren had the concept Reynolds versus Sims, and he ignored himself. So our question is, okay, now if we get our own state, how can we get away with having a senator for each county? Those 2 times the court ignored itself. Because it will be for the greater political good. Our counties will still retain the one-man, one-vote system. In Lassen County, people of Lassen County will vote for their state senator. People in Plumas County will vote for their state senator, but that senator will only represent Plumas County or only represent Lassen County. So you're not going to lose your vote, but your vote will be more effective because the man who serves you will be within your reach. In Siskiyou County, I go in Walmart and I see our District 5 supervisor, and I'm going up the aisle, wait a minute, and she's trying to get away from me, but she can't. And I ask her, why did you do this? And she tells me, she's a good woman and very smart, and we all like her. But the point is, whether I agree with her or whether I don't is irrelevant. She's a good person trying to make the best decisions she can for our county because she has the local knowledge and local talent to do so. California is nothing more than a large public service corporation. And this half of the state is the division that nobody's ever been in. Most of them don't even know where the door is. It has cobwebs on it. Most of the middle managers in Sacramento have never visited the factory that we call Jefferson. They don't know what it takes to live your lives. They don't have any idea what happens when they enact laws that subjugate you or take your money. And so what we're asking for is, what do you do in any big business when you have a division that the company claims is unprofitable? Well, number one, you either fire the boss and get a new boss. That's not going to happen. Because under Reynolds versus Sims, most of the people like what Jerry Brown's doing. And that's okay. That's the way it works. But what you can do is what most corporations do. You spin off that division and you allow local talent with local wisdom to address local problems. And that's exactly what we propose as a spin-off. where we give the county of Lassen the lion's share of the power with a part-time legislature. They're going to work on even years, on legislative matters, on odd years, budgetary matters, and they will form a state with a constitution that is so difficult to change it'll be unbelievable. One of the mistakes California's made is it's amended its own constitution 521 times in 163 years. The federal constitution has been amended 17 times in 225 years, and a couple of those people thought better of and repealed the amendment, like the alcohol amendment. So what we want is a constitution that protects the individual, protects your liberty, protects your right to property and your ability to use that property to make a living for yourself and your family. And that constitution will be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to change, because what we're doing is we're trying to think for the next 50 generations. We're trying to think for the next 100 years so that our children and their children will have a much easier time securing liberty for their posterity. Okay, so let's go quickly through how this is done. The way we decided to do it, and by the way, never having broken a state in half before, mistakes may have been made, but we came up with the idea of a declaration. Now, a declaration is a document that has been reviewed legally. It's a legal document reviewed by many county councils, and it is appropriate and sufficient for the job, but it's carefully worded in order to create a principle called standing for the county of Lassen. One of the things it does have is the legal description of Lassen County, because when you ask to get out, the state has to know, well, who wants to get out and where are you? So it has the legal property description of Lassen County, and it simply says, I declare and petition to withdraw from the state of California due to lack of representation, and then the middle part of it is the individual problems that face Lassen County, I don't know, water, things, sage grouse, water, grazing, things like that. In Siskiyou County, it's timber, water, coho salmon, mining, and in Del Norte County, it was the state's lack of ability to allow them to expand the airport, timber mining, things like that. So it is an open document. Your supervisors are free to change that to anything they want it to say. That's how it works. But it has been reviewed and approved by 6 counties. It's been reviewed legally. It is a good document. And it says certain things. There are certain principles in there that it's best not to change because it weakens your standing in any discussion that happens later in federal court. So what we're doing really is we're asking your supervisors to affirm a declaration that gives Lassen County a seat at the table when representation is discussed, and it will be discussed. We have enough counties to start that discussion now. But what we would like to do between now and the first of the year is get as many counties as want to join. If you don't want to join, it's okay. God bless you and good luck with California, because we got about 12 other counties we're headed to. We have new counties calling all the time. We've actually been called from Orange County and San Diego County. We said, gosh, thanks, fellas, but, really it's a little far afield. What we want is a state that has a historical, economic, and moral linkage to one another, and that's the state of Jefferson, clearly. Ranching, farming, mining, gold, rural areas that lack representation. And if Southern California would like to get away from Los Angeles, they're welcome to. We'll show them how to do the Article 4 process. But we want about 10, 13, 15 counties as a very good-sized state with 1.2 million people, and we'll have about a third of the geography of California, maybe a little bit less, with an economy that starts out 15% bigger than the state of New Mexico. And here's the trick, nowhere but up to go from there. Because we're going to form a regulatory environment and a business environment where we can capture some of the 34,000 jobs that went to Texas last month. And with responsible use of our resources, we have plenty of money. I mean, we are surrounded by all the resources in the world. Where's the money coming from? Well, in Siskiyou County alone, the payment in lieu of taxes for healthy stands management, in other words, logging just down to the federal timber harvest plan that's already survived NEPA, already survived all the court challenges alone, paid for the entire public roads department, the entire school system, and the sheriff's department. Now that there's no logging, we have none of that. Now we're a welfare county, but we're not poor. We have been impoverished by the regulatory processes of the state of California. We crafted a declaration. We have one for Lassen County, and we will give one to Joe and the committee, and then when it's time, we'll present that to the Board of Supervisors. They are good people. We want this placed on the agenda as a discussion item. They need time to consider this. They need time to talk it out. They need to ask the tough questions. They need time to think about that. That's fair. And we need to be able to answer those questions for them. So we prepare a presentation item, have it placed on the agenda by the Lassen Committee, and we'll appear before the Board of Supervisors and explain the Jefferson Declaration to your Board of Supervisors. They don't have to vote. We're not asking them to vote. But what we need is for you to pack that room, because it's not up to me to come here and tell your supervisors what they need to do. That's for you to do, and you need to show up and you need to pack that room in order to do it. Once that discussion has been handled and they have plenty of opportunity to ask you what you think about the whole idea, then they can consider it and place it on the agenda as an action item. And one thing we want to be very careful about, we don't want to go in there before they're ready to vote yes. If they need more time, more information, we'll give it to them. In Butte County, they asked for 6 months to consider it, and they want more information. They're constantly asking for it, and we'll give it to them. And if it takes them 8 months, that's fine. We want to supply them with enough information to satisfy them this is a good idea for the county. So that's what we'll do. Now, once we have all of the declarations that we need, and by the way, there are signature support statements in the back. They're not petitions. You don't have to show your ID to sign them. Children can sign them because they live here too. But we want as many signatures as we can get so that when we walk into the board, I think in Shasta County they have 8,000 signatures already and they're still building because we're not finished there. So when we go in, we want a pile of paper with your signatures on it saying you support state split. And it's not secession, by the way. Secession's illegal. This is Article 4, Section 3 state split. And it's been done before 4 times in our history. The last one was Maine departed from Massachusetts, and it took them 3 tries. But they used a strict Article 4, Section 3 process to separate Massachusetts into 2 parts. So once we have as many declarations as we need to form a viable state, we go to Sacramento. We've already recorded 2, and believe me, that was interesting. They did not want those documents. The Secretary of State said, what do you think what am I supposed to do with that? And I said, record it into the legislative record of California, stamp a copy, and give it back to me. Because what we're doing is creating a challenge. You have standing by affirming the declaration. That gives you the right to be at the table. If you don't have standing, the court will kick you out the front door because you have no right to be there. You're not claiming anything's happened to you, and you're not asking for anything. So once you have standing, and we have standing from 13 counties, we've already recorded 2. Then we went over to the state legislature, and we recorded 2, one with the Senate, one with the Assembly Parliamentarian. What we did there was we are petitioning for remedy by splitting the state of California in half so that we would have adequate representation. In other words, we announced to the state that something's wrong. We went to the legislature and told them what to do about it. Split this state. If they ignore us, they have created harm. Now, there's another thing that the court needs before they can address harm, and that's a remedy. If you buy an ice cream cone and you drop it in the parking lot and you sue the ice cream parlor owner, and the court goes back in and says, give him another ice cream cone, they say, I'm sorry, Your Honor, we don't have any ice cream left. We changed to a hot dog stand. Then the court says, well, gee, there's no remedy for your loss, so I'm sorry, it's an act of God, case dismissed. But what is the remedy for lack of representation? More representation. So what are we asking for? Are we asking to overturn Reynolds versus Sims? No. We're asking for an adequate representation based on the population model of the state of California, which is the worst ratio in the nation. 1 million people for state senator, 500,000 for assembly person. The next worst state is about 4 times better than California. So we're claiming dilution of vote and lack of representation. If we could get a court to go down to George Washington's model, 1 for 30,000 democracy, 1 for 40,000 is tyranny, we would have almost 2,000 assembly people in the state of California. And the same amount of senators, right? So what do you think the state house would do under that weight? Collapse, right? So that is our unspoken wish. If you allow us to separate peacefully, we will not yank the rug out from under status quo politics in California, and y'all can do what you want to do, and God bless you. Now, this is a win-win for California, by the way. We want all Californians to win. We need to help them understand why we need to do this and why they'll win too. And the way they'll win is they can consolidate all of their political power, get rid of most of the people that they perceive as opposition. We're not, but they think of us that way. And they can concentrate their vast wealth and resources to solve problems that I don't even know about and don't care about. You know, earthquakes, big freeways, water infrastructure, gangs, large buildings, things like that. We don't help them with things like that. And we're no benefit to them. And we, on the other hand, will win because we would be free to form a small rural government with a part-time legislature and a regulatory environment where the people are protected and businesses are encouraged to come. We know we'd win. We know we would win. And so that's why this is a win-win for California. It really is ungovernable in its present size. It really is. And President Polk recognized it in 1850. He said, that state's too big. We need to break that thing in half. Now, the problem then was Southern California wanted to be a slave state. So Polk wouldn't do it because he didn't want to create a slave state. Alejandro Pico tried it in 1859 or 60, and here's how the worm is turned. His logic in doing it, and by the way, this passed the California Assembly, passed the California Senate, went back to Congress, and it died because the Civil War started. But his logic was the affluent Northerners are taxing the death out of the agrarian South. Us farmers down here in Los Angeles Basin can't make it with all those taxes. And that passed. So, and the fact that the Senate and Congress never took it up was because of the Civil War. Now, in 1941, Jefferson, the shirts that you see, the double X, the double cross shirts, their big argument was roads to resources. This is so much bigger than that. But we use the symbol because it has a historical value, and people identify with it and they associate with it. So that's why we use the double X. And it is appropriate. We have really been double-crossed by Sacramento. Now, once again, as Robert alluded to, we're not out here to change CalPERS. If a guy has a contract with CalPERS, God bless him. And by the way, Article 10, Section 1 says no state can make any law that changes contract law. We not only don't want to do that and have no interest in doing it, it's unconstitutional anyway. You know, if you negotiate a contract with your employer, good for you. I hope it's a good one. I hope it works. We have nothing to do with that, and we won't have anything to do with that as a state either. And here's another aspect to it that people are wondering about, the debt. How will we apportion? And the apportionment comes under the LAO analysis that the state's attorney general did. And yes, I have some bad news, folks. We have to be a moral people or liberty won't exist. It doesn't work unless you're a moral people. Even though you weren't, thank you, even though you weren't represented, you weren't asleep when the money was getting spent, right? So we are going to have to assume some of California's debts when we break away. Here's the beauty. This is the only great part about Reynolds versus Sims. This is the only good part in the law. Under Reynolds versus Sims, we're based on population. Well, the state's attorney general's opinion is since Jefferson only has 3% of the people, we're only responsible for 3% of the debt. Now, California will only admit to $340 billion worth of debt. 3% of that is manageable. It's expensive, but we can do it. Now, if we wait 20 years till it's 5 or 10 trillion, it might be a horse of a different color. So we will be responsible for the debt. Now, everyone else, here's the scare tactic. Well, if we separate from California, we're going to have to pay back California for the prisons and for the bridges and for all the things they built. The state's attorney general says no. As citizens of the state of Jefferson, we were Californians paying taxes and voting when all that stuff got built. And the state's attorney general's opinion is any assets that formerly of California that lie within the bound, and once again, this isn't my theory. You can read this yourself in the LAO report on the 6 states proposition. Assets that lie within the state of Jefferson, formerly of California, will belong to the state of Jefferson. Let's talk about the prison just for a second, okay, because I know people are concerned about that. 3% of the prison population comes from Jefferson. 97% comes from California. So we would be responsible for the cost to house 3% of the prisoners, and we would send California a bill for the other 97%. Oh, by the way, that would be at market rate plus profit and overhead for administration. I'm a reserve deputy sheriff for Siskiyou County as well. I work for nothing for Siskiyou County, having gone through all the school, passed all the tests. You don't get your badge in a Cracker Jack box. You got to do everything regular cops do. You take the oath, and then you get to buy all your own equipment, and you got to work for nothing because my sheriff can't afford to patrol his county. In fact, he can't afford to patrol my house. That's why I volunteered. I love the law. I think law is the only thing that separates us from anarchy, but I also love liberty. So as far as I'm concerned, the last thing I want to see is a deal that endangers a correctional officer. In fact, if we charge California go and raid for those prisoners, we'll be able to give those guys a raise, and they deserve it. You know, all of the people we have now are people that we will need. You know, the other scare tactic is, oh, if you vote for Jefferson, we won't have road workers anymore. You know, let's go with adult rules today. If something sounds so stupid it can't be true, it probably isn't. You know, if we have roads, we need people to work on the roads. If we have prisons, we need guards, and we need good facilities. We need good schools. But Common Core is not the way. You are the best equipped people in the world to decide what education should be given in Lassen County, not the state. Our problem now stems from lack of empathy. We're governed from 500 to 900 miles away, and then they can't imagine what your lives are like. They've never been here. They've never asked anybody, and they don't care because their constituents live differently. But they are looking for revenue generators that come out of your pocket. And I'm telling you, everybody, for liberty, everybody better have a line in the sand. My line is the meter on my well. I will set up my line chair and get out the Remington and sit there and wait for them to come to try to put a meter on the well. So once we have enough declarations, we have legislation introduced, we find a couple of assembly people, hopefully one from each party, to introduce the legislation. And by the way, I went and spoke to the person who does Darrell Steinberg's thinking for him, his legislative advisor. This is interesting, and I really want you to listen to this part. I was very prepared not to like this gal, very prepared. I went in there, and the first thing she said was, you know, I'm an extremely liberal Democrat. And I was thinking to myself, Guy, I'm in the right office. But anyway, I went in there, and she was a very articulate, extremely intelligent person. And when we made our case, she said, you know, I'm not against that. Wow. She said, you make some very good points, and you have a very compelling message. Your problem is people in this building hate change. And they're going to hate the idea of saying that California now stops at the Sacramento County line. But 30% of the legislature is going to turn over in this election cycle. All we need to do, let's assume that conservatives are going to vote for us. Maybe most of them will, a couple of them probably won't, but let's start with that basis. We need to change 16 votes in the Assembly and 11 votes in the Senate. Out of 120, that's achievable, everybody. We can do that. Also, the Sacramento Bee ran a poll. They ran a poll a year ago, was it, Terry? And it was something like 11% wanted state split. They just ran a poll after we were in Sacramento on Thursday. 73% in favor of state split. We've already changed the conversation dynamically. We went from, those people are crazy, don't listen to them. We went to, well, it's never going to happen. And now we just passed, well, they have some really great points, but it's impossible. And now we're at the point that your message is very compelling, and all you need to do is reach a few more people, and state split is possible. Can you imagine the liberty available in the first Article 4, Section 3 state split in 150 years? Can you imagine the bump in tourism? I just had this kid from Der Spiegel magazine in Germany follow me around for 2 days. You know what he said to me? Germans would love this, because they don't have liberty there. Government came before the people, right? They have been underneath one monarch or another, or one socialist government or another, since their inception. People created government, everybody. Is the creation now more important than the creator? I say that's not true. My wife and I built our own house with our own 2 hands. We created that building. Is there anything stopping me from taking my bulldozer and knocking that down and building a chicken coop or an outhouse in the same spot? No, because the creation is never more important than the creator. I want to leave you with one thought. Patrick Henry said, I have but one light that guides my feet. I can't judge the future except by the past. I know of no way to judge the future except by the past. Subjugation by the state of California is meant for no other than us. It's been going on for 50 years. It's a sliding scale. We can look at the past and we can have a pretty good idea of how the future is going to go. And we have the power to stop that. Now, Patrick Henry also gave a speech to the Virginia House of Burgesses, and I want to paraphrase this speech for today because it really is appropriate for today. He said that he was in the Virginia Burgesses and the war was starting. They were fighting in Boston. And he said that if we wish liberty, we must separate. If we wish liberty, we must separate. He meant from Great Britain, but the premise is the same. He said, they tell us we're poor, and we can't do it because we're too poor. Will we be any stronger next week or next year? Will we be any less poor? Will we be in better position to do this next week or next year? I say to you, no. You gentlemen cry peace. You want peace. You want to just not think about this. You want to go down to the Red Box and get a video and an ice cream and go home and not have to worry about this stuff. Gentlemen cry for peace, but I'm telling you, there is no peace. The fight is here, and it's here now. And if you don't believe that, wait until they hang the meter on your well. Wait till your gas tax goes up another $2 a gallon. My wife just opened the bill, their electric bill. We own a small-town radio station in Wairika, California as well. And by the way, I'm a pilot. I flew around the world for 25 years. I served as a military contractor in 6 wars for the United States government, and I know what liberty looks like. I've been to every socialist paradise on earth, and I can tell you where governments work and where they don't work and why. They don't work because people aren't adequately represented, period. That's it. That sounds pretty simple, but that's the way it is. And so, will we be stronger next week? And the answer is no. So, you cry for peace and compromise, but there is none. The war is here. Listen to Sacramento. Listen to your chains as they approach you from the south, and they're nothing less than chains. Because if you bind a person's liberty, if you tax them out of their property, is that freedom? Can you enjoy the things you've worked your life for? Do you have a hope of passing those on to your children? Do your children have a hope of staying here? How many people in this room have kids that have moved away because they can't make a living here? Quite a few hands going up. How many of those kids are coming back? None. Because their chains that bind them are not tolerable to them. They're going someplace where they can have liberty and make a living, hopefully. And I hope they make it. So, we're not alone. We won't fight this fight alone, he said to the Virginians. He said there is a just God who stands with us. And we have to depend on that God to know the wisdom of this plan and to follow through with it. And 6 counties are in the fight right now. You're not alone. There are 6 counties with you, and we're talking to 10 more. And we may not end up with all of those 10. But we'll end up with enough of them for a viable state. So you're not alone. Lassen is not alone in this fight. We'll be here for you. We'll show you what works, what doesn't work. We'll be anywhere you need us to be to help you fight the fight here. Because it is you that's going to have to do this. I can't come here and do this for you, and I won't. If you want liberty, stand for it. And then he finally closes. He closes by saying, what would gentlemen want? What do people want? In a perfect world, what do you want for yourselves? What do you want out of your life? What do you want out of your government? And he says, is life so dear or peace so sweet that it would be purchased at the price of chains? Almighty God forbid it, for I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. So Patrick Henry knew, and he knew the price of it. And then Sam Adams, he had the best line I thought ever. First of all, you know, we talked about the summer soldier and the sunshine patriot, basically, right? And it's people who stand for this country that have a slice of the pie of liberty coming to them. But Sam Adams put it best because he said, if you love wealth better than freedom, if you love your money better than your liberty, go from us in peace. And crouch down and lick the hand that feeds you. We seek not your counsel nor your arms. May your chains rest lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that we ever called you countrymen. Ladies and gentlemen, the time has come for 51. Thank you.
Okay, guys.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have two questions. Number one, she talked about the school system, she mentioned we only have one high school, and so Fort Sage does not enter into that?
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part of your question.
Fort Sage does not enter into the high school system? Because my son graduated from Fort Sage.
Okay,
That's out in Herlong.
Can you repeat the question, Terry? I can't understand it. Can you?
Okay, let me try. Sorry. When you were talking about the education system, and you said there was only one high school in Lassen County, what does that doesn't include Fort Sage High School?
Oh, okay, that was Barbara.
That was Barbara.
I don't know how many high schools.
Okay,
yeah,
so.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't know how many high schools
we don't know
there
how many
are
high schools you
but
have
the
in your
point
county.
is,
talk to Barbara.
The number of high schools you have will be up to you to decide, not up to the state.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing is that the educational system and everything that happens in your county will go back to the counties. See, that's the thing about stuff like this. Okay, let me finish before you formulate a question. Let me finish. Okay, the thing is that basically when you have a situation where you have education, you have roads and those types of things, that'll be up to the county. And many of those things are going to happen during the Constitutional Convention. So any question like that would be something you would decide at the county level on how you'd run your education. Okay.
So now we're talking about Fort Sage. That's government. What about Herlong?
Okay, well, here, once again, now, PILT money will fund education, and you have a tremendous amount of resources, and also, by the way, the state LAO report says that about 90% of the water comes from the state of Jefferson. So we have a tremendous amount of potential here to generate revenue for education, and yes, in all probability, you can have 2 high schools, but that would be up to your county's Board of Education to decide, not the state.
Okay, well, I'm going to take the next
well, now you're talking about that's on a federal installation?
Yeah, it's a federal installation.
Feds are the feds. Federal money will the state of Jefferson will be a state like any other, sir. And so any federal money that comes to any state will come to the state of Jefferson as well. So that high school won't be changed at all. It's still going to be funded by the federal government. Okay.
First of all, I want to thank you guys for showing up today. And I like the whole concept and the idea. The one issue you guys brought up I'm not sold on is the prisons. And there's no way that California is going to pay full price up here if we're a different state when they send people to Tennessee, Arizona, Mississippi for half the price.
First of all, this is the only level 4 in California. Where's the other one?
I've worked in the department for 31 years. I've worked SAC, CSP SAC, Corcoran,
okay,
Kern Valley State
but
Prison,
those are also overcrowded, right? And let me tell you,
what I'm saying is they're sending the inmates out of state to other prisons for half the price. There's two prisons in this county, and there's a third one in Del Norte County, and it's going to impact all 3 of those prisons. And I think that's why our Board of Supervisors hasn't addressed this
I
issue.
doubt very seriously they'll withdraw the prisoners from Jefferson when they're willing to send them to Tennessee. For half the price plus transport?
They do it every day.
I'd like to see that. I'd like to see all that. No, we'll check the records of California.
You know what, sir? I'd like to talk to you more because, in other words, if there is a plan that the COs can participate in so that we can make sure this works for them, that's what we want to do. Because, once again, I'm dead serious. I am a deputy sheriff. I don't want to see correctional officers in danger, and I don't want to see them take a pay cut. But I'm sure that amongst all of us, we can come up with a plan to where those employees are protected and their jobs are protected. Thank you. I appreciate the question. Thank you, sir.
Good question.
My question is, if we withdraw from the state, how are we guaranteed statehood as a 51st state? Are we going to become just a territory for a while?
Oh, no. There is no constitutional provision to take a part of a state that was formerly a state and make it into a territory. The only way you can go is from state to being a state. So no, we would not be a territory. There's no legal precedent, no constitutional precedent for that. And once again, state split has been done 4 times already. And each time they were states created from other states. So yeah, don't worry about that.
Does that require approval by the United States government then?
It requires 51% vote by California and 51% by Congress. But before you think about this, I've already talked to congressmen. And if conservatives retake the Senate in 14 and 16, they're going to let us in.
Hi. It's my understanding that it costs $100 million each year to support the prisons. How would that, and that would be every year. And as a new state, how will we come up with that money?
Well, once again, 97% of the money would come from the state that would have to house their prisoners here.
Well, I understand that, but would it be enough?
Well, yeah, 97% of $100 million is $97 million. All we'd have to come up with is $3 million. And PILT money alone would pay that.
Okay, and then I also, are we going to have a sales tax and a state tax?
We have an 88-page financial analysis, and we have analyzed the situation with 0 sales tax, 1%, 5%, and so on. So what we favor is, and what we theorize, and once again, the State Constitutional Convention will have to decide all of this. It's not up to us to say how everyone is going to live. But our model says with 5% or less in sales tax, 1% property tax, and 0 state income tax will be profitable.
That's good. And one last question. As Southern California starts going broke, what's to stop the migration of the welfare people up into the state of Jefferson?
Well, first of all, we have to be immoral people or liberty doesn't work. But second of all, we have to envision a state government where we limit state welfare programs so that communities, in other words, the way welfare was handled in the past was by churches and community service groups. And why? Because you know who your neighbors are that need help. And what we imagine is a state government where community service groups handle any food, the food that's distributed, clothing that's distributed, any charitable contributions, so that people who need help truly get it, but people who don't deserve it don't get it. And I can tell you probably 90% of the welfare would move to Sacramento where the paycheck's better.
Thank you.
But federal programs are federal programs. If the feds want to blow the dough on programs, we'll certainly administer those programs with a much smaller share for administration. And also on the tax situation, what we would like to see is the county auditor and tax collector collect all the taxes and then send the state what the state is due, period. Instead of the state collecting the taxes and giving the county back what they think they deserve. So the revenues, and we have 8 or 10 other revenue schemes that will generate revenue for the general fund without affecting the taxpayer.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming.
All right, thank you for coming. We have in our state CAL FIRE, and in this area we have BLM and Forest Service helping us fight fires. What's going to happen to that?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that question, because under the Enabling Acts and the Equal Footing Acts, all new states have the right the undeniable right to enter the national stage on equal footing. There are 9 western states right now that have a real challenge going in order to reclaim federally managed state lands for beneficial use. That's BLM land. And Alaska was the last precedent. They got 4.9 million acres of federal land handed back to the state, and they placed that in beneficial use, which paid for the startup of the state of Alaska. You know, the thing is, every job that Southern California has, every job that California has, we also have. I mean, we have them in smaller numbers, but typically we have them. We're going to need a state firefighting agency. That's for sure. We're going to need road work. We're going to need prison guards. We're going to need policemen, doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, nurses. We're going to need all those things. None of that's going to change. The difference is we will have a regulatory environment and a business environment that attracts new enterprise, attracts jobs, and attracts economy so that we'll have the money to pay for those things without borrowing or taxing people to death. We will still have a state firefighting agency. We will still have a drug task force. But for example, one of the ideas we've floated with our sheriff and other sheriffs, if we need a state drug task force, why can't each sheriff's department ask for volunteers, and each sheriff's department of the 15 counties provide 3 volunteers for 1 year to act as the state drug task force? Why can't the most experienced firefighters from each county spend 1 year on a rotating basis to act as advisors to the state firefighting agencies? There are so many ways we can be more efficient. California has 570 plus state agencies. As a small rural state with 1 million people, heck, we could probably make it with, 261 of them. So we have ideas for all of that. But also, we welcome plans and suggestions from guys like you. If you have knowledge of firefighting, if you have knowledge of how that structure should be set up, please get a hold of someone and let's start writing that plan so that it's efficient, it protects the employee, it protects the taxpayer, and it's going to work.
But I'm not sure what you said about CAL FIRE. Does that mean we have to pay CAL FIRE?
That means we'll have our own state firefighting agency. And what we'll do is we'll give all the best guys in CAL FIRE a chance to switch over to CAL Jeff, or Jeff Fire, or whatever you want to call it. And a lot of them will stay, because I'll tell you, I know a lot of firefighters and I know a lot of cops, and most of them like liberty.
How much money do you anticipate starting out with to do all these things?
We can't know that exactly because we don't know how many counties are going to join, but our forecast is our economy will be 15% bigger than the state of New Mexico on the first day. But once again, we're poor, right? And we can't do this because we're poor. Why is it okay to be poor in the state of California with nowhere to go but down, but not okay to start out poor in Jefferson with nowhere to go but up? So we may start out without all the money we want, but I'm telling you, it's going to start dramatically from day one going up. You know, what the German kid told me, and also I talked to a reporter from Tokyo who did a story, and he said, the Tokyo guy especially, and I've been there many times and I know this is true, Japanese people love the West. Germans love the West. They love anything Western. Every Japanese and German tourist in the world would be flocking to Jefferson to see what liberty looks like. Heck, the bump in tourism alone would probably help us through the first 5 years. I'm not worried about the economy at all. Thank you.
Good questions. Yes, sir.
What about such issues as the water that we're sending to South? And, they're already talking about resurrecting the peripheral canal.
Okay.
And all that sort of thing.
Now, one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to jump on the stump and scare anybody into thinking that Jefferson will have its hand on the big water faucet. That's not our intent. However, the Equal Footing Act and several Supreme Court cases, and I have a list here somewhere I can ferret through afterwards and find them for you. The Equal Footing Act, which is a Supreme Court decision, and the Enabling Act says that all states enter on an equal footing. And so all issues are on the table, including water. all issues. Look, a great many things are possible if we have our own state. A great many things, none of which are possible if we keep doing things the same way but expecting a different result. We would certainly be in a position to renegotiate Central Valley Project water for beneficial use for the people of Jefferson. And by the way, I don't find anywhere in the Constitution where a fish or a frog are more important than people, and it certainly won't be so in Jefferson. I believe in careful stewardship of the land and the environment. I'm a rancher myself. The last thing on earth I want to see is a devastated environment. But there are ways of doing that without breaking people's backs, and that's what we're going to be about.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think that about wraps it up. Joe, are you still in here? Joe, are you still in here?
Thank you, everybody, for spending your Sunday with us. We sure appreciate it, and hopefully you can help us do something here. It's time to do something. Call your supervisors, and all you have to say is, I voted for you, I favor state split, and I'd like you to support it. That's all you got to say.
The reason I ask if Joe is here, because maybe if a couple of you guys would just grab chairs, I think they need to be stacked up or something, and maybe if we all pitch in and do that, it'd be great. Anyway, thank you all very much. Thank you.